The individual who occupies your thoughts genuinely holds affection for you. However, the actual explanation for the gap that exists between you both will catch you off guard. Allow yourself to inhale deeply and gently before proceeding. This communication carries weight. It does not skim the surface. It penetrates the unspoken realm that exists between two individuals who experience profound emotions, yet rarely articulate them. Whenever somebody remains perpetually present in your consciousness, not sporadically, not by chance, but continuously, a purpose exists that transcends mere happenstance. Should any form of separation exist between you, whether it manifests emotionally, through physical space, or within unbroken quietness, then focus your awareness carefully, because that gap differs from what you might assume. The initial reality you must grasp goes as follows. The individual dwelling in your awareness does hold love for you, not expressed through theatrical, cinematic gestures, not conveyed through vocal proclamations or perpetual communication, but through a manner that remains understated, powerful, and frequently challenging to endure. This represents somebody who never forgot your existence or transitioned away with ease. This describes somebody who transports fragments of your essence with them wherever their path leads. They retain the subtle details about your being, the pitch of your speech, your facial reactions, the manner in which you provided them with security or exposed their vulnerability. They preserve these recollections intimately because they hold profound significance. Then what explains the separation? Because affection does not invariably draw individuals nearer. On occasion, affection compels individuals to retreat, establish a pause, and contemplate before they can wholly commit. Affection, particularly profound affection, may trigger apprehension rather than bravery. Whenever somebody authentically loves your being, something unpredictable awakens inside their spirit. They begin recognizing what they currently lack, what they stand to forfeit, and what they might not possess readiness to offer. Your influence extends beyond merely touching their emotions. Your presence reaches their fragile points, their unresolved injuries, and their historical anxieties. Such intensity may generate overwhelming sensations. Affection possesses a capacity for exposing insecurities. On occasion, these insecurities prompt an individual to withdraw, despite their emotions remaining authentic and steadfast. Comprehending that separation fails to indicate indifference becomes crucial. It fails to signify the affection has vanished or that your significance has diminished. Frequently, the quietness or spatial distance mirrors their internal conflict. They attempt to digest emotions surpassing verbal expression, surpassing ease, surpassing any straightforward clarification. They might desire proximity to your presence, to communicate openly, to convey their sentiments, yet apprehension and doubt restrain them. Their cognition accelerates with inquiries. Do I possess adequacy? Will disappointment follow my actions? What if my affection proves insufficient? What if harm results from my involvement? These considerations burden heavily upon somebody who authentically cares. Retreating becomes their method of managing that burden. On occasion, affection resembles a substantial weight. The greater somebody's concern grows, the stronger they experience the obligation to safeguard both your well-being and their own. They wish to contribute everything, yet they harbor anxiety that excessive contribution might result in suffering, dismissal, or inadequacy. Consequently, separation transforms into a defensive strategy. They harbor no desire to forfeit your presence, yet they equally wish to avoid failing in loving your being according to what you merit. Admission proves difficult for them. Communication becomes challenging, and frequently comprehending their own state proves equally taxing. They traverse a boundary between longing and apprehension, between intimacy and detachment. The space they establish sometimes represents the sole method they recognize for managing. Every behavior, including behavioral absence, carries significance. Whenever somebody retreats, the reason stems not from emotional emptiness. The reason originates from emotional fullness, excessive fullness at moments, and they require space to comprehend it. Their affection persists constantly, despite not always manifesting visibly. They contemplate your existence during tranquil intervals, recall minor gestures, mentally replay interactions, and envision what your existence signifies to them. That constitutes affection. Although it might manifest as separation to external perception, The intensity of their experience frequently cannot find expression through elementary words or steady contact. Their affection resides within the quietness, within the intervals, within the unseen connections linking their cognition to yours. Grasping this necessitates patience. It necessitates perceiving affection not solely through behaviors, but through absence, through limitation, through the quietness enveloping somebody who experiences depth. It represents an affection that carries complexity and multiple dimensions. Neither elementary nor straightforward. It signifies an affection that tests both involved hearts, because navigating or comprehending it does not always prove simple. It requires empathy, compassion, and the capability to perceive beyond surface appearances. Confusion or hurt from the separation might affect you, yet truthfully, the individual in your awareness often exists closer than your perception suggests. If this connection resonates deeply within your being, express real through written response. Their affection maintains presence, despite existing silently. Ultimately, the separation between you fails to mirror your value or their sentiments. It mirrors the intricacy of human emotion, the challenges accompanying complete love while confronting internal anxieties. Should you recognize this, should you sense the profundity behind the quietness, then comprehension of love's authentic nature begins. Affection does not invariably produce noise. Affection does not invariably show itself. On occasion, affection exists within quiet yearning, within unvoiced concern, within the space dividing two hearts while maintaining their bond. Therefore, the subsequent moment you experience the separation, take a breath. Understand that the individual in your awareness loves your being through methods that might remain invisible, yet prove profoundly authentic. The separation fails to represent absence. It represents presence maintained within a delicate human structure. They navigate their personal anxieties, their personal insecurities, and their personal obstacles. Yet throughout everything, the affection they experience for your being persists. It lacks simplicity, it lacks ease, it lacks volume, yet it exists unshakable, quietly formidable, and profoundly committed. Not because your actions were incorrect, rather because your actions were correct. You generated within them something profound, something unanticipated, something they lacked preparation to experience or comprehend. Third point, the separation you observe fails to constitute rejection. It represents self-preservation, a barrier they construct around their being. This might startle you, yet listen attentively. The separation exists not because concern has decreased, rather because concern has intensified excessively. They recognize that approaching nearer might cause them to descend too profoundly, too rapidly. They might expose themselves to emotions perceived as excessively substantial, excessively unprocessed. They might become vulnerable in manners they lack readiness for. Vulnerability generates danger in their perception. They harbor anxiety about forfeiting control regarding their emotions, regarding themselves. Therefore, rather than accepting that risk, they select quietness. They retreat, not for inflicting harm upon you, rather because they experience fear of harming themselves, or, alternatively, generating disappointment within you. Their separation becomes a form of protection, a defensive barrier they construct. Because from their perspective, you merit somebody possessing greater strength, enhanced stability, more completeness. Among the most agonizing realities exists that whenever they observe you, they authentically believe they lack adequacy. They perceive your profundity, your emotional awareness, your transparency, your capacity for boundless affection. Rather than attempting to elevate themselves to that standard, they diminish. They continuously tell themselves, happiness will find them without my involvement. Disappointment becomes inevitable through me. Readiness eludes me currently. Wholeness escapes me. Adequate healing remains incomplete. Separation subsequently transforms into a behavior of complicated, distorted affection. An affection that generates suffering for both them and you. Fifth point, they wage an internal struggle, invisible and incomprehensible to you, while you question why contact remains absent. Inside their cognition, disorder prevails. Contemplations circulate perpetually. Should communication be initiated? Should quietness be maintained? Should return occur? What if destruction follows regarding what currently exists? What if meeting their requirements proves impossible? What if falling short of their standards occurs, generating disappointment through unpredictable methods? Their quietness lacks tranquility. It resonates loudly internally. They mentally revisit moments with you repeatedly. They conceive interactions that never materialize. They visualize circumstances that might never manifest. They scrutinize every phrase previously exchanged, every expression, every instant of connection. They question whether you contemplate them equally. They wonder if you have progressed beyond them. They investigate if you harbor resentment, confusion, or hurt. They construct complete narratives within their cognition about what you might currently think or experience. This mental turbulence generates exhaustion, yet they continue because you occupy their contemplation profoundly. Their retreat stems not from emotional frigidity, but from emotional overwhelm. The separation originates not from indifference, but from excessive caring. The conflict raging internally frequently surpasses what words can adequately convey. They recognize what they experience. They comprehend the connection's authenticity, yet they equally recognize their current incapacity to honor it appropriately. Sixth point. They harbor belief that you merit superior quality than their current capacity to provide. This becomes essential to grasp. Their retreat occasionally originates from a distorted manifestation of respect. They observe your being and recognize qualities they wish they possessed: emotional maturity, stability, clarity, resilience. Meanwhile, they recognize their personal deficiencies. They observe their patterns of behavioral inconsistency, their emotional unavailability, their tendency toward retreat whenever intensity escalates. Rather than subjecting you to these patterns, they distance themselves. Their reasoning follows this path. Should I remain proximate? Inevitable disappointment will follow. I will display inadequacy during crucial moments. I will generate hurt unintentionally. I will demonstrate I lack readiness for somebody of their caliber. This mentality, regardless of how flawed or self-sabotaging, feels authentic to them. It represents their reality. Consequently, separation transforms into what they perceive as an act of care, a method of shielding you from their perceived deficiencies. They convince themselves that your happiness increases through their absence rather than their presence. Seventh point. They replay moments with you endlessly. While you might assume they have emotionally progressed or forgotten, they have not. They retain memories with striking clarity. That conversation where laughter felt effortless. That instant where eyes connected and unspoken understanding flowed. That moment where vulnerability emerged and acceptance followed. These memories remain vivid, replaying during solitary moments, during silent evenings, during instances when distractions cease. They contemplate what might have developed differently. They question whether communication should occur. They wonder if you contemplate them similarly. These recollections generate both comfort and torment, because they remind them of something genuine that they currently cannot fully embrace. Eighth point. Your absence affects them more profoundly than you realize. Regardless of how silent they remain, regardless of how withdrawn they appear, your absence registers within them. They notice when communication ceases. They observe when your presence no longer occupies their daily existence. They experience the void, yet pride, fear, or confusion prevents them from acknowledging it. They convince themselves this represents what proves optimal. They rationalize that space serves both parties beneficially, yet internally, they struggle with the loss of your presence. They miss aspects of you they lack courage to vocalize. The manner in which you comprehended them without explanation, the security you provided through mere presence, the acceptance offered without conditions. Ninth point. They wish circumstances differed. Despite the separation, despite the quietness, they harbor wishes for alternative possibilities. They wish they possessed enhanced emotional readiness. They wish fear failed to dominate them. They wish they could approach you without hesitation, without doubt, without the burden of their unresolved concerns. Yet wishing fails to transform reality. Readiness cannot manifest through desire alone. Healing demands time, reflection, and frequently solitary processing. They recognize this intellectually, yet emotionally, the yearning for your presence persists. This internal division between recognition and emotion generates further conflict, perpetuating the cycle of retreat. 10th point. Silence fails to indicate forgetfulness. This becomes vital to comprehend. The absence of communication fails to equate to the absence of emotion. They might refrain from contacting you, yet you remain within their contemplation. They might avoid discussions about you, yet you occupy their internal dialogue. They might project an appearance of progressing, yet internally, they remain connected to what existed between you. Silence frequently represents their sole method of managing intensity. Communication risks exposing excessive emotion, excessive vulnerability, excessive truth they lack preparation to confront. Therefore, they select silence, not because you lack significance, rather because you hold excessive significance, and they lack capacity for managing that reality presently. 11th point. Time might bring clarity, yet guarantees remain absent. Healing, growth, and self-awareness require time. They might eventually arrive at a position where fear diminishes and readiness increases. They might ultimately discover courage to approach you completely, without barriers, without hesitation. Yet this outcome lacks certainty. Certain truths only surface when emotional settlement occurs, when mental quietness arrives, when layers of anxiety and self-questioning have diminished. Hastening this progression proves impossible. Controlling the timing of healing or self-understanding proves impossible. Patience, comprehension, and emotional space represent the conditions under which clarity organically emerges. If readiness exists to allow time for healing, express time through written response. 12th point. What significance does this hold for your being? This portion carries paramount importance. Unlovability fails to define you. Excessive intensity, sensitivity, demanding nature, or awareness fail to characterize you. The connection was not imaginary. Authenticity existed. Reality was present. You encountered somebody who held deep concern for your being, yet who lacked readiness to meet you completely at equivalent emotional profundity. That reality fails to diminish your value. It fails to signify failure on your part. It solely indicates that timing, readiness, and internal development occasionally dictate relationship trajectories more powerfully than desire or intention ever could. You experienced affection, authentic affection. Despite arriving with separation, apprehension, or quietness, it maintains significance. Recognition occurred in manners that held importance, and the connection left impressions upon both individuals. Recognize that separation and quietness fail to invalidate experienced emotions. They mirror personal struggles, anxieties, and incomplete growth, not measurements of your value. The most significant truth indicates that affection fails to always fail when apparent absence exists. Occasionally, it merely waits, develops, and persists quietly until appropriate timing arrives for both hearts to unite completely. Until that moment, the influence of shared experience remains permanent, molding your capacity for empathy, comprehension, and deeper affection through methods you might not yet recognize. Until that moment, the influence of shared experience remains with you, quietly molding your heart and your comprehension of affection. Despite inability to perceive them, despite separation and quietness appearing endless, their presence persists through subtle methods, through lessons you carry, through empathy you experience, through recognition you now possess regarding emotional profundity within yourself and others. Pattern recognition in future relationships might occur that reminds you of this connection. That fails to signify weakness, rather it signifies development. Every unexpressed word, every interval, every moment of yearning has contributed to your becoming. You acquire patience, self-compassion, and capability to maintain space for somebody else's anxieties without forfeiting yourself. You acquire understanding that affection extends beyond mere proximity, presence, or perpetual communication. Affection additionally encompasses respect, comprehension, and quiet acknowledgement of somebody else's struggles, despite that acknowledgement arriving through silence. You realize that occasionally, the most profound manifestations of affection express themselves through methods you cannot immediately contact or quantify. Despite somebody's retreat, despite their backward step, the affection they experience maintains existence. It might remain concealed, enveloped in apprehension, hesitation, or internal discord, yet it proves authentic. This fails to mirror your value. Excessive intensity, sensitivity, or demanding nature fail to define you. Humanity defines you, capable of profound connection, and deserving of somebody who can meet you completely in reciprocation. The separation, the quietness, and the intervals fail to constitute rejections. They represent components of a broader, more intricate narrative of development, healing, and timing. Every emotion you experience, every memory that surfaces, every contemplation that returns them to your awareness, provides proof that the connection held importance. It molded you, instructed you, and reminded you of your personal capacity to love profoundly. Eventually, whether with this individual or subsequently with somebody else, the lessons and experiences will manifest in relationships that prove more balanced, conscious, and fulfilling. Until that moment, honor your emotions. Permit yourself to reflect, to experience, to develop. Maintain space for the affection that existed despite silence. Respect the progression, the timing, and the journey of both your heart and theirs. Understand that separation fails to eliminate affection. It solely reshapes it occasionally into something possessing greater strength, wisdom, and endurance than previously. Your heart undergoes learning. Your soul undergoes remembering. Your connection, although paused, never becomes truly forfeited. It resides quietly within you, directing your comprehension of affection, patience, and emotional profundity through methods that time will ultimately reveal. That fails to represent your failure. 13th point. Affection fails to invariably signify togetherness. Occasionally, affection signifies establishing separation for development, selecting quietness for reflection, retreating for healing. Not every affectionate narrative intends to persist in the manner it commenced. Certain relationships exist to awaken you, to provide self-instruction, to facilitate emotional development rather than to remain perpetually in your existence. 14th point. Should they ever return, difference will characterize it. Should they return eventually, casualness or half-heartedness will remain absent. It will occur because apprehension has relinquished its hold, because healing has transpired, because courage has been discovered to confront affection completely. Until that instant, the separation fulfills a purpose. Despite generating pain, confusion, or perceived injustice, punishment fails to describe it. It represents journey components, an interval permitting both hearts to mature, reflect, and prepare for what affection authentically requires. 15th point. The concluding message for your being. Cease attributing blame to yourself for somebody else's unresolved wounds. Cease diminishing your personal requirements, your personal emotions, or your personal truth to generate safety for somebody else. Cease waiting in emotional suspension, harboring hope for their arrival before readiness exists. Should they authentically love your being, they will meet you not partially, not in fragments, rather fully, completely, and consciously. Should inability exist, then the separation you experience fails to represent punishment directed at you. It represents a form of redirection guiding you towards somebody who can reciprocate your affection with equivalent profundity, stability, and presence. 16th point. Remember this perpetually. Somebody can maintain concern for your being deeply, intensely even, yet remain unready to stay. That reality fails to diminish the affection they experienced, or the connection's influence. It represents a truth that, although painful, lacks intention to break you. Instead, it intends to lead you toward affection that fails to depend on separation to survive. The affection variety that nurtures, develops, and remains steady despite challenges. Your heart deserves that affection, an affection that meets you completely and consistently. The lessons, the reflections, the intervals, and the silences avoid waste. They guide you toward the relationship that will honor your capacity to love without apprehension or compromise. If claiming this affection for yourself resonates, express, claim through written response. Welcome to content exploring psychological realities. Should curiosity exist regarding concealed truths of cognition and emotion, regarding why behavioral patterns emerge when affection becomes complicated, ensure you stay connected for future content. Through this method, missing insights that could modify your comprehension, alter your perspective, or illuminate the subtle, frequently invisible forces molding your relationships becomes impossible. These truths might facilitate perception of affection, separation, and emotional intricacy in manners that provide clarity, tranquility, and hope for what lies ahead. Comprehending these patterns transcends mere knowledge. It represents empowerment, It permits navigation of connections with awareness, compassion, and self-respect, ensuring the affection you contribute and receive aligns with development, healing, and readiness. Affection might remain silent, it might remain distant, yet meaninglessness never applies. Every step of this journey represents progression toward affection that authentically endures.